A very good evening. You're watching NDTV. This is India Global. I'm Gauri Dwivedi. Over the course of the next 60 minutes, you're going to get all the views, the news and perspectives that matter to the global Indian. But first up, as always, the headlines. US extradites New York City terror plot suspect from Canada. Pakistani man allegedly plotted the ISIS-inspired attack in Brooklyn. We ask, when will Donald Trump finally act against terror nation Pakistan? Latest in the Musk versus Trump saga, Elon Musk apologizes for the Trump rant after the feisty online feud. Last week, Musk regrets posts about Trump, says went too far. Question is, will the president pick up the olive branch? Protests over immigration raids intensifies. ICE protests now spread coast to coast as unrest in America continues. Shubhanshu Shukla's space flight deferred for rocket repair. The mission to ISS has now been postponed for the fifth time. A chilling terror plot, viewers, that has come to light. In fact, it could have been a reality in a Brooklyn community center, and that could have turned it into a bloodbath. Mohammad Shahzeb Khan, he's a 20-year-old Pakistani national who is also goes by the name Shahzeb Jadoon. What he tried to do was he had an ISIS-style terror plot in mind, which is why he was looking to come from Canada to America. Here is a Pakistani man who wanted to inflict terror in the heart of New York City. He wanted to do that on the 7th of October to coincide with the Hamas attack that took place in Israel. Why is it that Pakistan, which is the fountainhead of terror around the world, looking to inflict, Pakistani terrorists looking to inflict more terror in America? I want to play out this report that tells you why is this so serious, and then we come back and talk more about why is it that Trump is not acting on any of this and instead is choosing to praise the Pakistani leadership.
A storm brews in Washington as yet another Pakistani national is linked to a chilling terror plot on US soil. His name is Mohammad Shahzeb Khan, just 20 years old, an alleged ISIS supporter arrested in Canada and extradited to the United States. Prosecutors say he planned to attack a Jewish community center in New York City, aiming to carry out a mass shooting on October 7th, the anniversary of Hamas's bloody assault on Israel. An undercover federal operation revealed that Khan publicly posted about jihad, and his conversations mostly revolved around support for ISIS and preparations for the attack. But this isn't an isolated case. In May 2011, a Pakistani man was deported in a failed New York bombing case. Just months later, September 2011, another Pakistani was arrested on terror charges. Fast forward to August 2024, yet another Pakistani was held for plotting to kill US politicians. And in March, a man was arrested for smuggling US technology to Pakistan. Instead of sanctions, instead of accountability, the US recently showered the Pakistan government with praise as Trump branded the leadership as strong. That's not all, as Islamabad was awarded key positions at the United Nations Security Council, Vice Chair of the UNSC Counter-Terror Panel being one of them. And what about the money? The IMF, a US-influenced institution, continues to bankroll Pakistan. All while India raises alarm, warning that these funds may be fueling terrorism, not stopping it. The question remains, how many plots, how many arrests, how many near misses before America finally says enough? Bureau Report, NDTV World.
To talk more about this, I've got a voice that understands Pakistan like none other. Former High Commissioner of India to Pakistan, that is Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, who joins me live on the broadcast to decode why is it that Trump is not acting on this. Ambassador Bisaria, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thanks, Gauri, for having me.
I'm going to first play out the big questions, and then I'm going to ask you all those questions and the significance of all of this. Let's put out some of those big questions that we are asking. First up, why is Donald Trump actually loading Pakistani leadership where there are Pakistani terrorists who are actually being found in his own backyard? Secondly, are Pakistani terror links now a global wake-up call? It's not an India issue, it's a global issue. When will United States stop funding the pariah state? Again and again, all these funds go back to the terror factories. Our defense minister has said it, and we have so many instances of that playing out. Lastly, will Trump remove Pakistan from the key UNSC committees where it's now actually heading some of those anti-terror panels? Some would have laughed had it not been this deeply ironical, would have actually been at the cost of lives. That's how serious this is. And Ambassador Bisaria, let me ask you those questions firstly. First and foremost, the fact that you have Shahzeb Khan, a Pakistani terrorist on American soil, attempting to create mayhem there, should be a wake-up call for Donald Trump. Instead, you have the US president lauding the Pakistani leadership.
Absolutely. I think this is a wake-up call for the world. What it tells you is that the ecosystem of global terrorism is alive and well. And what it also tells you that its epicenter is Pakistan. As your report noted, the roots of a lot of terrorist incidents over the last decades can be traced to Pakistan. And what it also demonstrates and underlines is that this is not just India's problem. Terrorism is the world's problem. And this is what the multiple Indian delegations that fanned across the world were telling the world. And this is almost coming on time to vindicate that view that all this terrorism is not just India's problem. The world is not insulated from this sort of terrorism. You saw the plot that was meant to attack a Jewish center in Brooklyn. It had echoes of what we saw in 26/11 in Mumbai. It had echoes of 9/11. It had echoes of 7th October. So this is a very global kind of diabolical mind that is thinking about these acts, and certainly in multiple ways related to Pakistan.
Ambassador Bisaria, these global terror links that Pakistan has should be a reason to not have this country actually head key UNSC terror panels, isn't it?
Well, I would agree that the optics are terrible. India argued against it, and we would ideally like this not to be the case. But I think we need to factor in that the diplomacy and even the counter-terror diplomacy is a long game. You don't get immediate outcomes, immediate results. While this optics of this kind of thing happening, while a terror plot is unraveled, is terrible. But at the same time, we must understand that the UN is a very process-led body. And every 10 years or so, Pakistan is a non-permanent member of the Security Council. And all the members get a chance to head some or the other committee. So this is not entirely surprising, but certainly the irony of it should be clear to the other members and should be underlined to them.
Indeed, Pakistan took over as the chair of the Taliban Sanctions Committee and vice chair of the UNSC Counter-Terror Panel. Ambassador Bisaria, which brings me to ask you the other fact, the instances of Pakistani involvement in possible terror attacks on American soil. Something as recent as August 2024, where a Pakistani man was held in a possible plot to kill American politicians. All these should add up to Trump administration taking a very stern view of the Pakistani leadership. Instead, there are reports coming in of possible business links, whether it is the crypto links of the Trump family or several others.
Well, it certainly does underline to the Trump administration, but we must remember that the Trump administration or any US administration is a huge machine. The counter-terror folks, Kash Patel and his FBI will be investigating these links. Very important investigation would also be into whether these individuals are lone rangers or they also are connected to Pakistan's ISI, which we know has multiple assets overseas, which it uses for multiple, aims overseas, and also in fighting some proxy terror battles against India. So all this will have to be examined. And what we would also, the Trump administration, I'm sure, would be told by India that it ought to increase the pressure on Pakistan. But we must remember that Pakistan is not completely isolated. Pakistan has some uses for the United States. Even now, it did even more in the past, but after the US withdrew from Afghanistan, less so. But still, the US feels it needs Pakistan as a sort of counter to China. It doesn't want Pakistan to go entirely into the Chinese camp. It also wants some over-the-horizon capability in Afghanistan to deal with terrorism issues there, and Pakistan becomes a useful machine in that. So, we can't wish away the uses that Pakistan has, but what we can do is point to the US administration that it ought to be looking at Pakistan with clear eyes about the dual game Pakistan has played, even with the United States, even in this century.
So very quickly, the last question I want to ask you is something we've spoken about as well in the past, which is the constant supply lines that keep coming to Pakistan in terms of the multilateral funding. Our own defense minister is on record saying that global institutions ought to stop funding Pakistan because money ends up reaching the terror factories. There are 25 financial agreements that Pakistan has with IMF and several more are in the pipeline. Why is it that Trump is not stopping this when such instances like Shahzeb Khan come to light?
Well, I think, again, this is something which is slow. It is a diplomatic process in informing the world about Pakistan's connections to terrorism. We know that Pakistan has been in the IMF not for the first time, but for the 24th time. It's been going on for decades, while terrorism has been going on for decades. So now the global system has a sharp weapon, and that's the Financial Action Task Force. So I think the global diplomacy and India's diplomacy will be about highlighting that the FATF should be the organization that puts Pakistan back in the grey list, given all this mounting evidence of Pakistan's involvement in terrorism, and slowly those conditions should seep into other multilateral bodies like the IMF, the World Bank, the ADB, and therefore make it harder and harder for Pakistan to have this Janus-based approach of, professing one thing but supporting terror in its other face. So I think it is a slow diplomacy. We shouldn't be expecting overnight results, but we ought to be chipping at it. India is on the forefront of making this point, but the world needs to wake up and take notice.
Absolutely. The world needs to wake up and take notice. Thank you so much, Ambassador Bisaria, as always, for putting all this in perspective and connecting the dots for our viewers. All right, on that note, viewers, it's time to slip into a very short break. We come back on the other side, talk more about some of these terror links that go all the way to Islamabad and the options that India has to ensure that it wakes Trump out of his slumber. More on that after this break. Stay with us. Viewers, the question is simple. But the answer isn't. The question is, why is it that the Trump administration refuses to act against Pakistan? When will the Trump administration finally wake up from its slumber when it comes to the terror factories operating out of Pakistan? And in fact, to talk on that and more, I'm joined by General SVP Singh. He's a strategic affairs and defense expert. I'm also going to get John Rosamondo, who is a counter-terrorism analyst as well. General Singh, let me start with you. The evidence is very clear. There are multiple instances of Pakistani terrorists found on American soil attempting to foment terror. But there is no instance of the Trump administration waking up to realize the threat that Pakistan poses, not just to India, but to the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Gauri. Well, you've got a good question to put. Well, why Trump is not acting, why US is not acting, is now a little old story to say so. You see, United States itself is not free from terrorism. And terrorist attacks are looming large in the United States, waiting for an opportunity to act. And this latest case, which is there, of this Shahzeb Khan, is a case in point. I want to recall that in 2012 also, there was one Farooq Ahmed who wanted to target in the Arlington metro rail line. And he was also nabbed and caught luckily. So this is the second case. Now, why they are not acting, I think we have to go back to the geostrategic and geopolitical setup, the geography of Pakistan, which is the underbelly to Afghanistan and the Central Asian republics. And that matters to United States.
Okay, I'm going to put that graphic which has those instances of the number of times this has been tried on US soil. Several times in 2011 and then of course as recently as to 2024. If we have John, let's also get him on the show. Okay. Yes, General Singh, finish your point, yeah.
So I was mentioning the geostrategic and the geopolitical factor. And I go on now next with China. You see, China also matters. Now, China has come in very deep, made Pakistan almost its province. The United States wants to keep a counterbalance. And how it is doing it is, this time round, what is Trump 2.0? More in transactional leadership style. So he has had some transactions with Pakistan and he's taking them forward. He's also paying them back because Pakistan did help them when Trump was there in 1.0 for the Afghan solution. Right. How it turned out later in the Biden administration is a different story. Next is that Pakistan being a nuclear power, the US is worried about that. They want to keep a control on them.
I understand what you're saying, sir. And I'm going to bring in John on that as well, which is that Pakistan serves some utility for America to ensure it counterbalances American interests in the region. But John, look at the cost at which it is coming. The cost is not the funding that Trump had originally thought of slapping it because he felt this was money down the drain, but because of the fact that Pakistani terror factories are looking to foment terror on American soil. And Shahzeb Khan is an example of just that.
Well, all I have to say is that, Pakistan has played a duplicitous role in American foreign policy for the past, how many decades? I mean, the Pakistan's ISI is a major fomenter of jihadi terrorism around the world, but there's this idea in the U.S. Defense establishment, intelligence establishment, that if we work with them, we can make them into a partner. But at what cost? I mean, Faisal Shahzad and other jihadi terrorists causing problems in our sphere. So I think the U.S. needs to, reevaluate its, work with Pakistan, and I think that, there's some rumors about President Trump having some issues with Modi being too nice to the last administration. I don't know. I think that there's a lot of very complicated things going on here, and it's mystifying.
I'll tell you what is complicated. I'm going to put that graph also on our screens in just a bit, which links the Trump family to crypto interests in Pakistan. And that could be another angle to it. And commercial interests do matter more so in the present administration. But John, the other question I want to ask, you mentioned that ISI is a jihadi army and wants to foment terror. It has happened on multiple occasions in America as well. What is stopping Trump administration from accepting that reality, and instead he is lauding the political leadership of Pakistan? This happened exactly 48 hours back.
Well, I think that the United States wants to be neutral in the conflict between Pakistan and India. I think that the U.S. Doesn't want to be seen as taking sides in the conflict. I think that the jihadi terrorism and the Pakistan support for terrorist activity is extremely disturbing. And it should be like cut and dry. I mean, Pakistan has harbored Al Qaeda on its soil, and the ISI has harbored Osama bin Laden and others, and continues to foment terrorism. But I'm just sort of like, I can't put a finger on what is causing this. It should be very cut and dry, and making it more complicated than it is.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your insights on this issue. At the end of the day, viewers, when you talk about Pakistan's terror factories, the evidence is there for everyone to see. Those details are right there. There is nothing that the Trump administration is not aware of when it comes to Pakistan's deep terror links. The only thing that is stopping Trump from accepting the terror that arises out of Pakistan is its own myopic view of how Pakistan could counterbalance some of American interests. But the price that they are looking to pay for that is too heavy, too large. The question is simple. Trump needs to wake up from his slumber. If not now, then when? Well, on that note, viewers, it's time to slip into a very short break. We come back with more on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back, viewers. It's now time to focus on the Trump versus Musk saga. Well, there's yet another update. It seems that Musk has extended an olive branch. But has Trump taken it? Does he have to take it? Why is it that Elon Musk feels that he must now ensure that he's able to end this feud that has gone too long and is likely to cost him billions of dollars? In fact, he's also posted on his platform X saying that he regrets some of the posts that have been made about the president last week. He said they went too far. Elon Musk and Trump engaged in a public feud over TV interviews and X posts after the Tesla and SpaceX CEO left his role in the government and criticized the Republican Party's new tax bill proposal. The tensions reached their peak when Musk published a series of incendiary posts linking Trump to the former financier Jeffrey Epstein, who died by suicide in custody in 2019 while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. Musk offered no evidence to support his claim, nor did he specify which files he was referring to. In a follow-up post, he urged users to mark this post for future, adding that the truth will come out. By Saturday morning last week, both posts had been deleted without any explanation. But the big questions on everyone's mind remains the same. Almost $40 billion hanging in the balance. Is Musk's apology a strategic decision or something more than that? I'm going to put out some of those timeline of exactly how it unfolded and why we need to now decode as to whether this is going to go, as to which way is it now likely to go. Let's get in Robert Moran, who's joining us live to talk more on this. Robert, now we've seen the back and forth that has taken place between Elon Musk and Trump. people would have probably picked up the popcorn to watch it had billions of dollars not been at stake, right? As things unfold right now, how do you see the olive branch that Elon Musk has extended to Trump?
Right. I think this is a classic example of two alpha males who just struggle to be in the ring together, in the same room together. Political logic, business logic would suggest that the two would cooperate and work together, that cooperation and working as a team, they would achieve many of the same goals that they have. And they do have a number of shared goals. And so it always struck me as somewhat illogical that these two would end up coming to sort of verbal blows and have a falling out. And perhaps they realize that it's not actually in either of their best interests to continue with this. I think it's not in Musk's business interests, obviously, to continue with this. And so I think they're trying to find a way to reduce the heat and extend an olive branch. And we'll see what happens.
Robert, none of this is a surprise for Elon Musk, right? When he was writing those tweets, putting out those really inflammatory personal attacks, he knew that there will be a blowback. There will be some sort of an impact on this. So are we to believe it took him that long to realize what will be the fallout?
Well, I think you see this generally with people who are in America, we'd say very online. And they're tweeting their entire life and living online. And I think, sometimes in the heat of the moment, people overshare and say things they regret. And it looks like he's trying to walk this back. There's been widespread reporting here in Washington that the White House also reached out to him. White House staff reached out to him and attempted to de-escalate things as well. It's not really in either their best interest to keep doing this. You would think that they would try to go back to cooperation, although it may be too late. But I'll close at this point, which is that in American history, there are a number of political leaders that had enemies that turned enemies into friends. George Washington was famous for this. Abraham Lincoln was famous for this. Great statesmen are able to resolve personal conflicts and turn enemies into friends. And I think, in a way, this is a test for both men. It's also a test for President Trump as well.
To be fair to President Trump, he's actually been quite dignified about this entire fallout because a lot of the inflammatory comment predominantly came from Elon Musk. What do you think is going on in terms of the calculations that President Trump would be having before he decides the next step here?
Well, I don't think it's in the president's interest to have one of the world's smartest and most accomplished men as an enemy. And I think the issue in part goes back to the fact that Elon Musk does not have a detailed political background, doesn't really understand how politics works at a much deeper level. And so I think he has a more mathematical view of the budget and may not fully understand how far the president can go in Congress to get his budget deal. That sounds like it was really the friction, was the budget deal. And so we'll see. But you're right. The president's comments were actually very measured, remarkably measured for him. And so we'll see what happens. But like I said, it's in neither of their best interests to actually continue this feud.
I'm going to leave it there, Mr. Robert Moran. Thank you so much for joining us live on that story that the world is watching for and looking for as to how this ends. Well, viewers, bottom line on this is that eroding the political capital of a sitting president is no small matter. And as the gravity of his claims, which are still unproven, viewers, fell on him and also his shareholders, Elon Musk decided to first delete the post and then extend an olive branch to Trump. With $113 billion eroded and dim prospects of any future government contracts and subsidies for his many business ventures, Elon Musk is now hoping for more than just a truce. He is hopeful that the president will pardon his tirade. There's a lot riding for Musk, who has seen $34 billion of his personal net worth wiped out in just 5 days. But for Trump, there's nothing to lose. And for once, he is holding all the cards. Turning attention now to what's playing out in America the last 6 days, a high-stakes political gamble playing out in Trump's America. One critics say is less about public safety and beginning to be more and more about power. After a wave of immigration raids swept across Los Angeles last Friday, chaos followed. Mass protests, fiery clashes, and a city that is on the edge. But the real storm came from Washington. President Trump bypassed California's governor to deploy 4,000 National Guard troops and Marines into the city. His message was clear, which is that unrest needs to be controlled one way or the other. Troops now guard federal buildings, but critics say this is something else. This is looking like executive muscle, a federal takeover, if you will. And that's what the Democrats are saying, without permission. Now let's break down the numbers. There are currently more federal force deployed in Los Angeles than there is in Syria and Iraq combined. But Trump, well, he's going all gas and no brakes. And he's hinting at more such deployments. And analysts warn that Los Angeles may be the first, but not the last, as to how this will go on in terms of a federal crackdown. Even as deployments may continue, but it seems that riots and protests are not ending. This is turning out to be the real face of First World America. And let's get those questions that we are now going to pose to our experts. First up, New York, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Chicago, all those places where those protests are unraveling and continuing. What does this mean? Why are Marines now enforcing civil immigration law, as I said, in multiple places? Next, what triggered the military-level federal response by the Trump administration? Are riots the new normal in First World America? Why Trump has deployed more soldiers in Los Angeles than in Syria and Iraq combined. Let's get in two voices. But first up, let's get in David Sofer, who's joining us from Washington. He's a Republican strategist, to put some of this in context. David, I'm sitting here in New Delhi, and what I remember is that when riots used to happen, when protests used to happen, we used to get global lectures about how freedom of speech, right to assembly, right to peaceful protest should all be acknowledged and given, because that is what needs to be given. Suddenly the tables have turned. Do we get to preach now?
So, first of all, thank you very much for having me, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the first responders and the police officers and the small business owners that have been injured, looted, and are really struggling out there in Los Angeles, California. It's a shame what's happening in Los Angeles. They've had a very, very rough time with looting and crime and businesses being shut down. And it's a shame that the local enforcement there could not provide adequate security for the protests that turned into riots in no short order. Nowhere under freedom of speech, which we always advocate for, does that give you the right to throw rocks and projectiles at first responders or the police or the military. Now, Karen Bass is the mayor of LA. She has a history of...
Yeah, I'm listening to you.
She has a history of decriminalizing crime and not having adequate security at these,
Okay,
protests
so you
that
are
start
making...
out and
Okay.
they go into riots. So that's where we are. So it is a good thing, and this should be
Okay, you are making a
bipartisan
case...
thing that we have public security and safety there
Okay,
to protect American citizens, and also the protesters as well, because the peaceful protesters there aren't safe as well, as you can see on TV.
Okay.
Philip,
you made a case for... Right, okay. David, you made a case for why these Marines and these National Guard and these soldiers should be deployed. But my question is still the same, and it's the simplest question, and I'm going to put that to Philip. Philip, do you think people like us in India, who've long heard long lectures about how we don't have freedom of speech, how we don't have freedom of expression, we don't allow right to peaceful protest, right to peaceful assembly to our people. Do we now get to preach, all of you? At least I believe I have earned the right, after hearing earfuls for decades, that we should now be preaching to all of you how protests should now be handled? You're on mute.
Sorry. Yes. I thank you for having me. And I believe one of the things that obviously Americans have been preaching is that we have the right to free speech and we have the right to protest. I think that that's true. And so when we have instances like this where free speech, freedom to protest, those things are being quelled and squashed by military force, I think that in some cases you do have the sort of, I guess, as you would say, the right to preach in that aspect, because we should not be. Now, I don't agree that we should be rioting, however, but I do think that using military force to quash protest is the wrong way to go.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly, I'll tell you, the last time President Trump was in India was in January 2020. And that was the time when in Delhi riots were taking place about a legislation that the Indian Parliament had passed. And because of that, there were riots that followed, and President Trump did make some comments. Given the fact that it was a law passed by the Indian Parliament, one can turn around and say that President Trump probably did not have enough knowledge to speak about it. Either way, when those riots happened, India was within its rights to put and quell those. But somehow the playbook is different, isn't it, David? When President Trump does it in America, it's completely different, isn't it?
It's not different at all. And this has nothing to do with the First Amendment right or peaceful assembly or protest. This has to do with rioting and looting, and
that's exactly what I said. There was rioting and looting there as well in Delhi, but somehow President Trump had a different thing to say then. That's exactly what I'm saying.
So we set in our National Guard as a response, which should be a good thing, and it should be a bipartisan thing. So this is a good thing. What's happening is showing that America is secure, is keeping its citizens safe, and we're not going to tolerate this kind of crime. Let's call it what it is. I mean, there's nothing patriotic about this. This has nothing to do with looting and vandalism and burning and coming after first responders. Has nothing to do with protest or your First Amendment rights. These rioters don't actually have these rights, because they're committing felony crimes against first responders and Americans, and it's not safe. So we are the party of safety, which is a good thing.
Okay. Philip, I want to ask you this, that deployments aside, I've made my point in terms of how things are being viewed differently. But larger point here is that deployments are continuing, and so are the protests. And in fact, the protests and the riots are spreading out. How do you see this now going from here on?
Yeah, well, I just want to also say that I do agree that people should not be placed in danger. But I do want to say that for a lot of people, it seems like when military force is being used to sort of quash freedom of expression, and I think it's also important for people to, especially for your listeners, to understand that Los Angeles is a massive, massive city, and these rioters, as they're are being called, are a very small sort of, it's happening in a very small sort of area. And so when you have these massive deployments, which are taking up more than what I think the Pentagon announced, that it'll cost more than $138 million to deploy both the National Guard and the Marines. When you look at those sorts of things, you're not sure if all of this use of force is completely necessary.
Necessary or not, it looks like it's not sufficient for sure at this stage, simply because protests and riots are increasing, aren't they? Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me. I'm going to address this story maybe again tomorrow, as it looks like this is far from over. Thank you so much for joining me today on India Global. And on that note, viewers, it's time to slip into a very short break. We come back with more on the other side. Stay with us. Turn attention now to what's happening in Canada. Well, a diplomatic frost may finally be thawing. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has extended a formal invitation to Prime Minister Modi for the upcoming G7 summit in Alberta. The move signals a dramatic shift from the tense Trudeau years. And that, says one former US defense official, makes all the difference. Michael Rubin, who's a former Pentagon advisor and senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, sees Carney's move as more than symbolic, calling it a return to sanity in foreign affairs. Rubin didn't stop there. He accused Justin Trudeau of inflaming tensions over Khalistan, not out of necessity, but out of political convenience. Now, with Trudeau sidelined and Carney leading the charge, India and Canada may be poised to rebuild. And as Rubin put it, this time the fiction ends and diplomacy begins. Listen in to what he says.
The grievances with regard to Nijar and with regard to the Khalistan movement were exaggerations that Justin Trudeau amplified. Look, Justin Trudeau may have wanted so much to appease radical Sikh extremists in various constituencies that he was willing to take an organized crime hit between various Sikh groups and mafias and blame an outside power for it, rather than to acknowledge the problem and the fault was Canada and Canada's alone. That is Justin Trudeau's problem. But now that Justin Trudeau is gone and likely will never return to power, Prime Minister Carney is taking a sober approach and recognizing that he is not going to be tied to Justin Trudeau's fictions.
Turning attention now to the latest in the US-China trade talks. Donald Trump says that China will supply rare earths upfront to America as part of a trade pact. The relationship between the world's two largest economies is excellent, Trump said in a post on his social media platform, adding that we are getting a total of 55% tariffs and China is getting 10%. He added that magnets and any necessary rare earths will be supplied upfront by China, and that the US will be, in turn, making certain concessions, such as allowing Chinese students to attend American colleges and universities. The agreement is subject to final approval, with the two sitting presidents signing it off. Meanwhile, representatives from both sides had yesterday revealed that a deal had been reached on trade after a second day of high-level talks that are taking place in London. And finally, as a splash of pink in Rajasthan, Sambar Lake has turned into a flamingo paradise once again. Every year, from June to November, thousands of migratory birds descend upon its saline waters, turning the lake bed into a vibrant sanctuary, a stunning reminder of nature's seasonal spectacle. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Global. Thanks so much for watching.